Thank you very much, and howdy. So yesterday we had a talk from Steve Bradbury at Iowa State, and he was describing some of the work going on up there, looking at risk assessment of pesticides on monarchs. And when we think about a pesticide, this is a pretty broad class. This is insecticides. It's commonly what people think of when you say pesticide, but it's also fungicides, rodenticides, and then herbicides. And that's actually what I'm here to talk about today. This is a new, and how Monsanto is working on a new product, and how are we going to communicate that to farmers, enable them to work with it without creating trouble outside their field. This is becoming an increasing focus with EPA, and I'll be also talking about that as well. So this is the Roundup Ready Xtend crop system. Everybody's heard of Roundup Ready. You've got a soybean, cotton, corn, whatever, tolerant to Roundup, the active ingredient glyphosate. Over time, as farmers have used that, when you use the same management method over and over and over again, you get resistance. And so that's what this is going to solve, is the resistance problems. The way we're doing that is adding another herbicide into it, dicamba. And so that way you're going after resistant weeds, going after them with something they're susceptible to, also preventing another weed from becoming resistant. And the reason, so farmers have been adopting this now for 20 years. And what really gets them excited about it is the management. It simplifies weed management. You can go in there with a single herbicide or maybe two herbicides. You're not going to have to cultivate. You're going to reduce your labor requirements. You can go to cultivation or go to conservation tillage, including no-till. That's one of the things that Roundup Ready really spawned, was rapid expansion of no-till. And then that labor requirement. You can take a field that used to have to be managed by your entire family, get it down to 2 people. You're no longer going to put your 12-year-old out on a tractor to manage weeds. It changed everything for him. But that becomes the problem over time with that rapid adoption. Now I've got an issue with resistant weeds. Now I've got to start thinking about how are we going to do this differently in the future. And it really comes down to the best management practices. For us, it's stewardship. For EPA, it's the label. The label is the law, and that's the requirement that farmers are held to. So as we get ready to roll this out, this will be the first year, we're going after the stewardship from 3 different ways. One is education, the other one is collaboration, and then the last one is technology, and I'll walk you through each of those in some examples. So with education, this started back in 2012, 5 years ago. We start rolling it out to our employees, just explaining to them, this is the new technology coming, this is what you're going to have to think about, these are the sorts of things we're going to have to consider in the future and how it's managed, just getting them familiar with it. Since 1974, Monsanto's pretty much been glyphosate and Roundup and a few other things. This is kind of a different way of looking at the world for us. 2013, 2014, we start rolling it out to our dealers and our retail associates. We got about 12,000 of them out to these, we call them Roundup Ready Learning Experience site. We always like the cute names. And, and the idea was, to get them some firsthand experience with it so that they could try it, so we could walk them through, this is how it's different from Roundup Ready alone, this is what you're going to have to consider. You're working with 2 herbicides, you're going to have to start thinking more about drift, you're going to have to start thinking about how do you control weeds in your field and do your job as a farmer while leaving everything else outside the field untouched. And then finally, 2015, we start bringing it out to our customers. And we had about 8,000 coming out, and just being able to see it, understand more about it, learning about it firsthand. And then last year, we really had the big rollout, where they could actually try it out themselves. And they could use it, experience it, and now you've enabled a group of farmers. So now they're not just having to come to us for the information. They're able to actually go out and try this out with, you can talk to your neighbor who's done it. You can find out what they know about it, see what their experience was. We also brought in extension agents, things like that, so they could understand how it works. And then, of course, you have all the standard, the 800 number, the websites, all the PDF files and endless brochures and things of that nature. But really, it's a lot about getting people access to firsthand knowledge of people who've tried it out, and they can help them understand how to use it. Collaboration was another big one. So this is, where you get out with the extension people, the equipment manufacturers, what's going to work, what isn't going to work, how are we going to be able to let the farmer do their job and leave everything outside the field alone. And really, that academic testing becomes a very big deal because that's our first feedback from outside the company of they tried it, what did they get, here's the data, and you can have an exchange that way. But at the base of all this is the stewardship through technology. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with dicamba. The early formulations of that are kind of tricky to work with. You know, when that was originally introduced, it had this issue of you apply it on a hot day, it'll evaporate off and move sideways. That's really not what you want on a lot of acres of soybeans and corn and cotton across the U.S. You want that to stay put. You know, for one, if the farmer's growing something susceptible next door, he's going to hurt himself, but two, he's going to get his neighbor, he's going to get any pollinator habitat that we managed to talk him into planting. It's not really the best day ever. And so what we had to do was develop a new formulation that's going to keep that volatility down. And to be able to figure out how to do that, we actually had to develop all new test methods for it. Turned out there are no test methods that we could rely on. So we came up with this, you can kind of see this humidome. You've got soil in there, a plastic lid on it, you apply the dicamba to it, put the lid back on, and then just measure the volatiles coming off over time. This is kind of an example of some of the data. You see that far side on the graph with the very large bar, relative volatility. So this is a current formulation of dicamba that actually does very well on volatility. You put the wrong water conditioner in it and it goes right off the field. And so that's what we're showing there. That's the worst case scenario of what could happen if if a farmer's doing it wrong. Next to that, you can see clarity at the very bottom, and it's a tiny bar. When you do it right, the herbicide stays in place. And then we have that expansion there. And you can see clarity, which is actually a very good product and has very good control of volatility. Next to that is our new formulation. And so that was really the goal, is to get something where I have confidence, and the farmer has confidence, and everybody around him and his neighbors have confidence that when they're using this product, when they put it down, it stays where it's put, it does its job, and it's not moving anywhere else. And so that forms the basis of what you take to EPA, to get the label. And you can see here, so this is the set of label requirements in graphical form. Some of these we developed. Some of these are ones that EPA added on. If you start at the top left, it's just a very simple, use the right formulation. Don't go back to the old version of dicamba. That's not approved on the label. The label's the law. You have to use the new formulation with low volatility. This AMS with a slash through it, that's ammonium sulfate. It's a water conditioner. It can cause volatility. That's off the label now. Importantly, the application rate, 22 ounces an acre. So you've got less than 2 cans of Coke of the formulated product being used across an acre. That's it, no more. The label puts an upper limit on this. Gallons per acre, next. You take those 2 cans of Coke, you dilute it in 10 gallons of water, you apply that across 10 acres. And that's the concentration that's required on the label. Spray nozzles on this are hugely important. That's where we're getting in with the equipment manufacturers. If you think about, you get a plant mister or something, you spray it, it can blow around if the particles are too fine. That's not what you're after. You want to have very large droplet sizes so that when it's applied, it drops and it stays where it's supposed to go. Spray boom height is another one, 24 inches. If you have it too high, the wind can catch it and take it somewhere else. So we and EPA have agreed we're going to restrict that spray boom height. Going after the weeds when they're less than 4 inches here on the bottom row. Get them when they're susceptible. Don't wait until they're 12 inches tall. You will not have a good day. The wind speed at application is another one, 10 miles an hour maximum, so that you're not risking having it blow sideways. The buffers are another one. So this is where EPA, we understood, yes, we're going to have buffers on this. EPA now, they really are taking pollinator issues seriously. This has become front and center for them with both the President's pollinator proposal a couple years ago, but then just ongoing as the risk assessments evolve, this is becoming front and center. And it's all about protecting habitat. You think about the amount of work, we'll be talking later about what does agriculture do, when I'm dealing with row crop farmers, and how do I convince them you want to have monarch habitat? Well, we don't want herbicides blowing on that. That's a bad day. So this becomes part of that, making sure you've got a buffer. And it's actually not just downwind, it's all the way around the field. Also, the ground speed when you're applying, don't exceed 15 miles an hour. It's another one that maintains control of the product. And then finally, just rinsing out the containers at the end. You do a triple rinse. You make sure that the next time you use a sprayer, you don't have something else in there that you weren't expecting. And so then all these together are the combined things that we had to go out and talk to both our employees, our retailers, our customers, to make sure they were ready and they understood what these requirements are, so that when they go out and use it, they're doing their job, but they're not hitting something next door, they're not hurting their own crop that's susceptible, they're also not going to hurt that habitat that they've actually installed. And with that, that is everything I have. If you do have any questions, please make sure you submit through the app. I'll be around all day through dinner. I've got all my cards with me. And then also the last one, if there's something that, it strikes you a few weeks from now, we have a website, gmoanswers.com, and you can submit anything you want on there. And it's kind of fun because, you get to ask us stuff, and then if you don't like it, you can poke us again, and, we keep going around and around. It's really enjoyable. And, but, so it's either, I'll either be answering that, somebody I work with, maybe it's an academic, maybe it's a farmer, it depends on the type of question, but that's another good resource if you have questions that you want to have answered.